job
because
conditions.
the rich become richer and the poor become poor because there are no restrictions or anything to help them. Like, I mean, they could be made to work for 15 hours and
Exactly.
scraps.
There's no protections for laborers. We're going to talk about that today and look at it in more detail later in the year. Okay?
Also children. I mean,
Well, of course, yeah, child labor, this is a big issue during the Industrial Revolution. One of the biggest conflicts is this conflict of labor versus capital. Make sure you write that down. Labor versus capital. Because we want to understand what each one is. Okay? Looking at this cartoon, what is this cartoon essentially saying? What's the message here? It's kind of cool because it's one of those where you have to do a double take because they both look the same at first glance. David.
If you work, you're gonna get your own money. You're gonna give your 100%, and like looking at the image, you're not. Well, being fat means that you don't do anything. So if you work, you do what you need to do, and you get what you need to get. And on the other side, if you don't work, you just see what other people do, and you let other things
Okay.
do the work for you.
I understand what you're saying, but I think the main point is something else.
If you're the one that works, you're gonna get like all the pain and you're gonna be 15 hours a day working, whereas if you're the one that owns the company, you're gonna be sitting all day watching your employees getting rich and eating and sitting there.
Yeah, no, this is it. Labor versus capital. Capital or money or ownership. Okay, labor versus management. Okay, this guy owns a factory. He's wearing a suit. He's got a fancy cane. He's got this big belly hanging out. It looks like this could be a gold watch chain. Nice top hat. Sitting there, he's got shiny shoes. Here's the worker who's carrying around a satchel, right, covered in dirt and grime. Okay, the difference between labor and capital.
Also, people,
One lives in poverty and one lives in luxury, according to this.
But just by seeing that, you cannot assume that people, like the managers, don't work hard.
I'm not saying that they don't, but there's a natural conflict.
But they do. They have
But
different
that
types
time
of
they were
jobs.
not the ones that did the dirty work.
Yeah.
The dirty work's done by laborers. I'm not saying managers don't work hard or business owners don't work hard. My father started a business, he worked very hard, and he's successful and he has a lot of employees. And nobody would, even his employees are grateful to him because he's given them jobs. And I'm not saying that. But I'm going to ask you this. Is there a natural conflict between labor and capital?
Yes.
Okay, we can all agree with that.
Yes.
Because the nature of capital is, well, you want to be competitive. Say I produce, I don't know, I own a company and we produce, what is this called? A pencil sharpener, okay? We produce pencil sharpeners in China. I pay my employees $5 a day, which is very low. But then Daniel produces pencil sharpeners in Vietnam and he pays his employees $4 a day. Am I going to be able to compete with Daniel?
No.
Why?
Because I produce the same amount of pencil sharpeners, but cheaper.
He produces the same amount of pencil sharpeners, but he produces them cheaper. He can sell them for the same amount, and he has more leftover money at the end to reinvest into the company or to put into his pockets and buy himself a nice new suit, whatever he wants to do. Okay? So kind of the nature of capital, you're forced to compete with other capital, right? So to be competitive, like look, Intel just left Costa Rica. It's not because they don't like Costa Rica, right? It's because it's not competitive anymore compared to a place like Vietnam, which is similar, right? They have an educated population, reasonable infrastructure, right? But they can pay those people less to produce the same product. And Intel, if they continue to produce their things here in Costa Rica, they're competing with companies like Qualcomm, right, who are already maybe producing their stuff in China for cheaper. They're not going to be able to compete.
Why?
Capital has to go to where it's most efficient to produce. Cost efficient. What was your question?
Why can they be like less in Vietnam? Like
Cost of living is lower. Taxes are lower.
The rules for labor, the rules that protect the workers are lower.
Yeah, guys, less protective laws. Okay, we see, and you guys, I mean, you've seen images, and we're going to look at them in this class, of factories in China, what they call sweatshops, and horrible conditions people are working in today, right? 100 years ago, it was the United States where working conditions were like that. Children, you had child laborers. 150, it was England, right? So it's kind of like countries go through this industrialization process. Some haven't, obviously, yet. There's plenty that have not. But you know, there's growing pains, they call it, right? A lot of people suffer through this development, the Industrial Revolution, but it eventually makes the country stronger, right? Now, if there's a natural conflict between labor and capital, what's in the best interest for labor to do?
Labor union.
Yeah. The hand that will rule the world, one big union. Here, this is a nice image. Everybody's kind of coming together and they make this big, powerful fist. And together, they can do what's called collective bargaining, right? Where they all together united negotiate with ownership or capital, right? Over their work conditions, etc. To give you an idea of the achievements of unions, 5-day work week. Only reason you don't work 6 days a week, and you guys don't go to, I mean, well, I don't know about school, but the only reason I don't work 6 days a week is because of labor unions. 40-hour work week. Some people work more than 40, but if you do, you get overtime. The reason you guys aren't working in factories right now or in coal mines, child labor laws. If you get hurt, you get money from your employer. That's called workers' compensation insurance. If you don't have a job, you qualify for unemployment. If you've been working and lose your job, the government gives you money so you can continue to pay your bills. There's minimum wage laws. All of these things were gotten by labor unions. None of them existed before people united and fought for them. Labor unions are not perfect, okay? They've been responsible for a lot of negative things as well. But the kind of simple, basic standards of dignity at the workplace, many of these things here, all of them, were fought for and achieved by labor unions, which labor unions are a product of the bad conditions people worked in during the Industrial Revolution. Okay, yeah.
What age can you start working?
United States, 16, you can get your working papers.
You can do that if you're 15, with permission of your parents.
I'd say I can only speak for New York State, because you can, if your family owns a farm or something, you can work younger. And you know, because we talked about the system of federalism, not all states have the same laws. Like I think in Alabama you can drive when you're 16 or 15, it's 16 in New York State. But I got my working papers when I was 16. So you just go to like your town hall, you get the papers, you come home, you sign them, your parents sign them, you bring them back, and then you can work.
I think here, if you are under 18, you can work, like, I mean, you can work from you turn 16 or 15, only in the holidays.
Because here in Costa Rica, you need to go to the caja and take out your papers.
No, but also you can work, like, when you are not in school.
But I think that changed.
Yes. Okay, so you guys are clear, you understand these,
Yes.
you know these, okay? Labor unions, organizing, negotiating with capital and ownership. They achieved these. Other thing I was mentioning already, urbanization. Make sure you write down urbanization, okay?
This is the north. And we're going to see the transportation in the south and everything.
Well, it's the same, guys. This is the same in the south, but just less of it, right? You understand?
Yeah.
So I mean, the Mississippi River, guys, the mouth of the Mississippi is in the Gulf of Mexico in New Orleans, which is in the south, right? So they have steamboats in the south, they have railroads in the south, they have canals in the south, just less so, okay? So less. But the same variety. So they have less of the same variety. North becomes more urban, where the south remains predominantly rural. What are the problems of urbanization?
Overpopulation,
Okay. Overpopulation, crime, diseases, poverty, homelessness, unsanitary conditions, fire hazards, right? These are all, and we see this today because, as we talked about, countries today are going through this process of industrialization, right? And you see these problems there. We have the advantage of having done it already, okay? And when you have problems like fire hazards and crime, then you develop things like police forces and fire departments, right? Municipalities, municipal authorities rather, they call those, to combat this stuff. So it's like this Industrial Revolution creates a lot of new problems in society that haven't previously existed. And then society finds a way to deal with them. All the problems with labor, you know, labor unions fight to resolve them. Like we said, the child labor, etc. You know, people working 14, 15-hour days, 6 days a week, getting paid barely anything at all. right? And these problems are addressed too. We still have them in certain places in the United States, all over the world. There's also benefits to urbanization. Okay? Can you read the benefits?
Business opportunities for investors with capital,
Mm-hmm.
were not for all, even if unskilled.
Good.
Employment for free blacks and immigrants. Opportunity for cultural
Diffusion.
distribution. Development of municipal authorities, Department of Education, Sanitation, Fire Safety, and policy. And the literacy rises.
Up to about 80% in 1850, which is good. All these things are very good. You know, the whole idea, there's more jobs even if they're unskilled. I don't know. It's hard to say because like my grandparents that came, or great-grandparents came from Italy, and they were like goat farmers in Italy, east of Rome, in Abruzzo, or Abruzzi it's called rather. So then they came to New York City, they immigrated to New York City, and all of the jobs in New York City were industrial factory type jobs. They didn't want to work in factories, right? They thought it was horrible. They did initially. So then they left New York City and went to upstate where I'm from, to Buffalo, and became farmers there. But a lot of people didn't do that. A lot of people went from mostly European peasants, right? They came to places like New York City, Boston, etc., and they took these industrial jobs, working in factories, building the railroad, right? Digging canals. People that dug the Erie Canal, mostly Irish. A lot of them died. It's very dangerous work. They're using a lot of dynamite. Digging a huge trench for 500-mile long trench, right? That you can fit a boat in. So it creates opportunity for people that are willing to take the chance. And even though you might have to work a crummy industrial job, the idea is your kids maybe will have it better. This whole social mobility thing, the American dream, and it's still there. You know, people come and they sacrifice themselves for the kind of advantage that they're giving to their children. Understand? Okay. Now, looking at the South, and we're almost there. How did Southern economy become dependent on cotton and slavery? This is pretty simple. It's profitable, but what makes it profitable? Because
climate.
Huh?
You have the climate, you have the conditions too.
Okay, we know the climate, the conditions for growing, but slavery is actually on the decline in the late 1700s. Slavery's going down, right? But then something happens that causes it to increase. Cotton gin. This thing right here on the right. If you've ever seen a cotton field, they're quite beautiful. I recommend that you go to one before you die when they're in bloom. They're incredible to kind of walk through. It's very kind of like mystical, magical experience. I lived in Georgia, and to me it was. But I also got caught up in the history and so forth and imagined, what that would have looked like 200 years ago. People, slaves working in it. But people used to separate the seeds because there's actually black seeds in each one of these little cotton balls and kind of shells, and they're sharp, right? It's actually cut your fingers trying to pull them out. To separate 1 pound of cotton, right, would take from the seeds would take an entire day, right? But with this machine but makes it possible for one person to separate like 20 pounds. So there's like a 20-fold increase, right? Do you have the exact number?
What? Oh no, it's new.
But it makes it much more profitable to grow cotton. Okay? Here's an idea. 1820, the green dots, cotton production, right? It's pretty sparse. You have a lot of it in Georgia and South Carolina, peppered in Virginia, North Carolina, right? A little bit here in Mississippi. 20 years, look at those red dots. And by 1860, okay, we're right at the precipice of the Civil War. I mean, it's all over the place. And each dot represents 2,000 barrels. This is a big business, guys. This graphic kind of illustrates the whole development. So by the late 1700s, profits are growing from tobacco, rise in sugarcane and cotton are moderately declining. The invention of the cotton gin allows workers to clean 50 pounds of cotton a day. I said 20, so I was wrong. Cotton becomes the South's most lucrative crop. Growers expand their holdings and plant more cotton. More land under their cultivation increases the demand for slaves. One of the problems is, 1808, the United States bans the importation of slaves from Africa. So what effect is this going to have? You want more slaves, right?
So the slave holders had sexual relations with the women?
Yes,
slaves?
this is actually but we know that they had sexual relations, but some of them would do it just to produce more slaves.
So they had like free slaves, and they didn't even need the slaves